two, but I don't think we'll ever know.
I don't think Wolf played any part in this match at all. I think his players did it. But then a few tackles later, you did get a kickable penalty, and this is arguably the controversial call. We had neutrals pulling it out as questionable in the fan views. So let's talk to the neutrals. Tim and Alan, what did you make of the tackle on his arm from Jackson Hastings?
The one on his forehead.
I made the tackle that was high and drifting towards head contact as a clear penalty for me. And in fact, I think other less composed referees at this point in the game may have given this as a yellow card.
What? Are you absolutely kidding me? Tertiary contact with the head, a yellow card.
Clear, neutral analysis.
No, unbelievable. Talk amongst yourselves. If you're going to talk utter shy, talk amongst yourselves for a second whilst I compose myself. Yellow fucking card. Oh,
it was clearly high.
I'm going to play this one back. I'm going to play this section back quite a few times, I think. Carry on.
Unfucking believable.
Who had about 45 minutes for the mark explosion? Because that's the.
I had earlier than this. I'll be honest.
All right, okay. Just.
Were you going to lose your sweepstakes? So you had to say something utter bollocks to make it happen. Fucking yellow card? Are you kidding me?
You didn't hear the caveats before of a less composed official on a different day.
When it was a worse offence, where he actually had any sort of direct contact with the head, that wasn't a front-on contact, that was clearly with the ball-carrying arm, and it was more Theo Farge's own arm that went into his head than Jackson Hastings is.
This is the fun part. Go on.
Oh. I was willing to concede that he did make some contact with his head, so I couldn't understand why a penalty was given, even though it was the softest call you'd see at that stage of a grand final. But, Alan, can we get some sense?
I've got my popcorn out here. Go on.
Well, I don't want to disappoint, but I've got a bit of logic to my argument. I understand why it was given. I completely understand why it was given. But there is a tendency for referees to swallow the whistle at this kind of time in a match. And I do think was it a touch judge call? Am I right in thinking that it was because obviously he was down?
I don't know. A more composed touch judge might have got the red card out.
I think there was some fourth official input.
Well, if there was, David, then it's an absolute disgrace because they're not supposed to give penalties.
Yeah, I think he probably.
It was the touch judge, was my understanding.
Yeah,
I think he was. I think he was the touchy, and I think, for me, part of the reason that the arm does end up around the head is because of the force of the tackle. It does bounce, but unfortunately, those kind of tackles that bounce off the shoulder and end up on the head are given as penalties every week. So
why wasn't Alex Wormsley given a penalty against him when he hit Sean O'Loughlin round the back of his head on the next set? If they all get penalised at that stage of a game.
I didn't say they all get penalised. I said they get penalised every week. I didn't say everyone gets penalised.
Kyle Amor got sent off at Wigan a few years ago for hitting the ball and it bounced up onto someone's head.
Yeah, I agree that on the replay that looked harsh for a red card. Yeah, I agree on the replay on that one. Yeah.
But I think it probably was. I mean, as a Saints fan here, I think it probably was a penalty, and I was absolutely relieved that we got it because it was difficult at that stage. I thought Wigan would hold on, so I think the only way we were getting level at that point was a penalty. To be quite honest,
I mean, from my kind of notes, around 65 minutes, I had Saints done. Because they looked like they were going nowhere when they were coming off their own line, and then they were making mistakes. And when Wigan got ahead, I was it felt like that was completely part of their game plan to kind of stay as tight as possible nick the odd try and kind of, get the result that way. And it felt like that's how it was playing out. The penalty is unlucky, but it was always a risk with the way that he went into the tackle. From my point of view.
Look, he did make secondary contact with Theophorge's head. I'm not saying that the arm didn't touch the head at all. So, Tim got the desired reaction, I think, that we've been waiting for the last 40 minutes. But
do you know what's funny is when I walked back into the bedroom on Friday night, I explained what happened, and the first reaction was, "Is Mark going to be sad?" and I said, "Well, we'll see on Monday."
Well, at this stage, I wasn't. This stage, I was panicking, to be honest, but because it was level, and I kind of felt that St Helens might have more drop goal options.
Yeah,
than Wigan have, because Luluai and Hastings, I don't see a strong drop goal options. So it's Powell or Hardacre, and Powell's your dummy half, so kind of a tell when he comes out to get into position to kick it. And Hardacre's not that consistent. Whereas Saints have got Makinson, who's got a long leg, but not that consistent as well, like Hardacre. But you've seen Coote be the most composed player on the pitch so many times for Saints in the last 2 years that I was starting to worry at that stage. It wasn't so much sadness yet at that stage, Tim. But what did you? So at 4-4, Alan sort of says he thought that was the only way Saints were going to get back into it. Did you think at 4-4 Saints were on to win it, Tim?
I actually saw a Wigan drop goal in it. I saw a Jackson Hastings drop goal for some reason, was where I thought this was going to end up. And then when the penalty was awarded, I then thought, well, this could be the script, isn't it? Grab the ball, kick it down, get it back for one. But they took the risk option. Hardacre backed himself.
Yeah. Well, Theophorge was clearly still dazed, so was stood not square, and that caused a 6 again. And then Dom Peru cleverly prevented the ball from being played properly to make Wigan have that difficult decision.
And it was a correct penalty to give, that's for sure.
And it was the correct decision to kick the 2. Now, my phone was hastily typing away, why are we going for the 2? We should be setting up for a drop goal attempt here. Because I thought our best chance was actually, potentially, Bevan French off someone dummy in a drop goal and finding the space and scoring with his pace and footwork and scoring a try. If the drop goal was closed down, I actually thought that, in all the bizarreness that could happen, would be the way this game finished bizarrely. That it finished with it kind of like the Salford Cup game against Warrington, was it, or against Catalan?
So at the time, Mark, were you calling for them to go for distance and tap it and go, or you were?
Yeah. I think one thing that's maybe been a bit overlooked, and that's why I deliberately mentioned it before, was Coote decided not to go for the 2.
Yeah.
From a slightly wider position, but pretty much similar distance from from the tee to the goal as Hardacre's. And I think that was a sensible, cool-headed decision. I think Wigan didn't make a cool-headed decision. Hardacre, what's everyone else's take on the kick? Because people have said it fell short, but I think it had the legs but went wide.
I thought it drifted wide by about a metre.
Yeah.
Well, from my replay, it looked probably slightly short and slightly wide. So, yeah.
Yeah, I was probably the same. I think it was missing on both axes for me.
But I certainly thought it wasn't the right call. I know Hardacre's got a long boot, but I think in those pressure sort of situations, whenever I've seen someone attempt to goal from that sort of distance, in those pressure sort of situations, it'd have to be an A-star goal kicker. It'd have to be Pat Richards. It'd have to be someone of that calibre for me to.
And you do sometimes get the kicker who's got a better, longer range and less. They don't take the kicks necessarily, but there are a few players that I can think of that are good at long range kicks. But I don't think Hardacre is anyone I've ever particularly thought would be in that category.
I think I've seen him do this once for Leeds, where he took a kick from the normal goal kicker because he had more length.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have been a Sinfield game because Sinfield's in the camp with Richards. That you'd be fine, you'd be comfortable. But I'm sure I've seen it once before where he took the kick off someone else. But I can't even remember if he kicked it or not. It was years ago, but I remember him having a kick from like halfway or something for Leeds once. But it felt like the wrong call, because if we'd have gone to touch, taken our time to make the decision, kicked for touch, had a set, Saints wouldn't have had time to get down the other end to have an attempt at a drop goal. So worst thing that would have happened, I think, is time would have run out and it would have been a draw and we would have gone to golden point.
Yeah.
I think if we'd have kicked for touch, Wigan, the one outcome that couldn't have happened was Wigan losing.
Yeah, I can't remember what I thought at the time, whether I thought, I was surprised whether they were going to try and kick it or not. What I can remember is being absolutely bloody terrified that he'd get it. I could not watch.
I had no confidence that he was going to kick this. For me, it felt like maybe a 20% chance of kicking it, and that they weren't good enough odds, for me to take it on, because obviously you can't guarantee kicking it dead, obviously. So the risk is that you're giving it to Lachlan Coote or somebody like that, or Regan Grace to kind of run 30 metres back before you even start, which is what actually happened. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it was Johnny Lomax that made the
was it Lomax?
Key play. Yeah, it was Lomax that made the key play here. He got us up to the 40 metre line from the
I think there was an element of the Wigan players maybe not thinking about the possibility of it missing enough.
Yeah.
At that stage, because Saints did really well on that set, probably their best set for 20 minutes or so.
Yeah.
Because before, when they tried to set up for a drop goal, they didn't get anywhere near close enough, did they? When Farge skimmed the turf.
No.
Farge dribbled one from the halfway line.
Yeah. But on this set, they obviously got a bit closer. They set up for someone with a bit more of a powerful boot, and Makinson had a swing. Maybe he needed to have had a dislocated shoulder, because his accuracy seems to be fractionally better when he's got the dislocated shoulder. But when that ball was up in the air, I thought there was no chance it was going over.
You were right.
I didn't see it going over. So I was quite calm. And then when it hit the post...
Ping the post.
Then when it hit the post, I was still relatively calm, because, as Jen had mentioned, how good had Bevan French been defensively throughout this game, taking kicks, under pressure, under immense pressure, not dropping anything, not being out of position once, doing everything with commitment and confidence throughout his defensive work.
He'd been immensely solid all game, and what he hadn't had one of his moments, but he'd been solid and he'd done everything you'd ask for. And from any other player, you'd think that was one of their best games all season. But he's set himself a higher standard with those X-factor moments that you were just wondering, where was that going to come from?
And then he just didn't. Then he just froze. He panicked, or he froze, or something. And as soon as the ball bounced, because I thought he should have gone to try and catch it on the full or push it dead on the full, either way, get to it on the fly rather than letting it bounce, because once it bounces, that's when I got nervous.
Yeah.
And he doubled down on the hesitation by hesitating for the second bounce, and all that did is open the door for young Jack Welsby who gambled on it. I don't blame Bevan French. I can't contemplate putting myself in the scenario he was in at that time. And there was